about desire and longing. Can you give us a sense of what role you see playing with having a deep desire for partnership, for lifelong covenant partnership with another person? If that's something that you don't feel like you can affirm, what does that mean for you? If that's something you feel like had played a role in coming to being affirming, what did that look like?
I'm quite a bit older than Greg. I'm from a different generation. I'll just own that. And so I lived for a very long time holding to the same beliefs as Greg. I know what it is like to be committed to a life of aloneness. And yet, uh, there is certainly companionship through relationships, friendships, church community, and Greg just very naturally draws people to him in that. I did too. And I've never not had that church community. And yet the older that I got, I realized that there was more to this desire within me, and I can only speak for myself, um, for companionship that went beyond friendship, that went beyond intentional community in which you live with other friends, because those friends can move, right? They can take other jobs in other places, and yet in a committed covenant, you go through life together, and that's what I was longing for. I used to ask church leaders, for so long we've thought that this is just about the sexual relationship, that it was just about sex. But it's so much more. It's about having somebody that you sit out on the deck with at night, and you plan what you want to plant in the backyard, and you figure out what you're gonna buy people for Christmas presents, and you wrap those Christmas presents together, and you put up the tree together. And when one of you is sick, there's somebody who's just built in, and you don't have to make arrangements for somebody to come and stay with you when you have a surgery. There are all those things that sometimes, as good and as wonderful as I have experienced church community, uh, there's not that understanding that at the end of the day, I still go home by myself. That's what we must have conversations about, because if my brother Greg believes that he is called to a life of celibacy and living by himself, then I am called to care for him in that and support him in that. And that means I live differently because of that. It's so easy for us to get caught up in our little nuclear families who require so much, and we forget. But we're very adamant about calling him to live in a certain way. We must also care for his needs.
Oh, I said
Yeah.
to quote my
Say it again,
father,
Greg.
that'll preach. Uh,
Thanks for watching this Theology Lab video. If you're enjoying it, you can subscribe to the channel below and you'll get more Theology Lab videos as soon as they're released.
yeah, I love so much the idea that any of us who believe, whether because we don't believe that same-sex marriage is an option, or simply because we acknowledge that even if it were, there might still be some people who Jesus calls to celibacy. Either way, if we believe there are people who are called to that, then we dang sure better also see ourselves as the people who are collectively called as the body to make that vocation livable. It's interesting, Sally. I mean, there are so many things that that I appreciate about hearing your reflection. One of which is simply the recognition that though you're still very young, you have lived some more life than me. And so, yeah, I always want to hold my own story and experience with the humility of saying, like, I'm 34, like I just barely passed my Jesus years. And yeah, life has a lot of lifing yet to do. It's also it's interesting for me to hear you use the word aloneness to describe your experience, because I both honor that was part of your experience, and also that at least doesn't yet feel like the word I would want to use to characterize my own experience. I think in part because I've had such like beautifully rich community in my life over the years. And also in part because my own experience of longing, which persists. I'm not suggesting like, oh, I just made some good friends, we spent a lot of dinners together, and then boom, the longing was solved. But for me, the ongoing experience of longing that exists within my singleness, my celibacy, has been not so much a feeling of aloneness as it has been a sort of repeated invitation to find company with Jesus in really sweet and intimate ways. And I recognize that I am an embodied human, and my intimacy with Jesus is not in this moment an embodied one. And yet I'm also so captivated by reading the book of Revelation and seeing that the thing we're headed to is this fully embodied marriage between Christ and his bride, the church, of which I am not the whole bride, but I'm like a piece of the bride, and so there's a sense in which all of that longing that exists within me currently becomes sort of a driving force toward the marriage that is to come. And so in that way, I think there was a time in my life when people engaged with me as if I was a very eligible bachelor. And yet I think increasingly, I feel like the better way to describe my state is that I feel kind of like I'm betrothed to someone. That I've fallen in love with a 2,000-year-old Jewish dude, and I'm just waiting for the wedding. And that there's great beauty in that. There's great longing in it, and yet I think that's appropriate. There's a wonderful line from C.S. Lewis's novel Till We Have Faces, where one of the heroines, Psyche, is describing her sense of longing, and she says, "It was when I was happiest that I longed most." And I think increasingly, at least in my best moments, my experiences of longing have been experiences of deep happiness in the midst of deep longing.
Allow me to say two things back to both of you. One is these are moments I'm moderating this conversation. I don't need to share my views here. So these are, even if I disagreed with you, things that were powerful to me. And Sally, one thing I would say on this topic, it was reading about when your life was so full of friendship, right? And yet you still had this desire for the companionship that you just talked about. And I thought, wow, that's really significant. Like that should give anyone who can identifies as a Christian a moment to pause and to think about what that would mean. And then, Greg, the thing I was going to note in your book, and this is unbelievable because Sally literally just said it to you, is you say it nicely, but in my head, I can only think it in like a wonderfully mean way, where you say like, hey, maybe the problem isn't, having to choose celibacy. Maybe it's that the church just hasn't done a good enough job in making that a viable option. But what I heard from Sally was to say, hey, kind of, I respect you and the decision you've made, and it's my job as a Christian to love and support you. And Sally, I don't know how you get to a place like that. But it's almost impossible not to see Christ in a statement like that.